this is David Strittmatter, visiting assistant professor of public history at Ohio Northern University, conducting an interview for the Kent State Guardsman Oral History Project. I have a guest with me here. Please, could you tell us what's your name and where are you from?
My name is William Herthneck. I go by Bill. And I'm in Medina, Ohio, born and raised.
And how long and in what capacity did you serve in the Ohio Army National Guard?
I joined the National Guard, the Ohio National Guard, in the fall of 1966, and served as an enlisted man through my basic training and on into my advanced training. And when I went back to the company, there was a program that the state of Ohio National Guard offered where a person could become an officer with the National Guard through a program involving a different type of weekend meeting and a couple of special summer camps, 2-week summer camps. So I did that program, and in the summer of probably 1968, I was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Ohio National Guard in the United States Army.
And looking back, how do you view your time in the Guard?
I don't remember my Guard time as being the best time of my life. I didn't particularly care for it. I wasn't good at it. I was the second lieutenant, but a lot of what we did at the drills when we went to training was, when we went for the weekend trainings, was actual classroom type training. And I'm not like you, sir. I'm not a very good educator. I'm more of a doer than a teacher. So I didn't feel like I was real good at it. I'm a good leader. I thought I was a good leader. I thought my people respected me for that. But I was terrible in the classroom, at the head of the classroom. But other than that, I was basically doing it was a 6-year obligation, and I was basically doing my 6-year obligation.
And what led you to join the Guard for that 6-year obligation?
Well, I don't want to say most, but like many people at that time, there was a draft, and at that time, the National Guard had a totally different role in the military. They weren't being, even though the Vietnam War was very active, or became very active, the draft was taking care of all of the needed military people, and so the Guard units weren't called up. So it was an alternative to going to Vietnam.
So if we fast forward to 1970, how was it that you were deployed to Kent in May of 1970?
Well, the company that I was with was deployed initially. Prior to the Kent State deployment, we were deployed as acting guards on overpasses because there was a Teamster strike going on. There was a lot of people driving trucks that were not Teamsters to try and get around the strike, and so the Guard was deployed to sit on overpasses because there was some incidents where unhappy Teamsters with these people driving the trucks instead of them were dropping bricks or rocks or whatever and injuring truck drivers. So we were deployed for, I can't remember how many days prior to Kent, probably 2 or 3, maybe longer. And then because we were already out, I guess, when the ROTC building was burned. We were deployed to Kent State, and I remember pretty vividly that night, because it was evening when we came in, that you could see the sky was all lit up with the fire, or maybe it was daytime and there was smoke, but there was, even from a distance, there was a very visible fire going on somewhere on campus. We didn't know exactly what it was as we were coming into the campus.
And so what are your memories of May 4th?
Well, my platoon was deployed on the far left flank of the group of soldiers that were lined up down in and around the ROTC building, is how I recall it. The students were ahead of us, and our platoon, or a group of us, very small group of us, were deployed to our mission was to go up the left side of what I looking at maps, I believe it was then, maybe still is, Taylor Hall. And my recollection of, and well, prior to that, if you want me to talk about my recollections of the events before we started any movement, was standing there for what seemed like an eternity as lobs of tear gas were thrown out to try and disperse the students. There was over bullhorns, there was notifications to the students to deploy, not to deploy, but to disperse, to go back to their dorms, go back to class, because I believe class was still in session that day. And they would throw the canisters of tear gas. It was kind of a game. I don't know at that point whether anybody really felt real threatened on our side. But there was a bit of a presence of Ohio State Highway patrolmen, but we were sent there to assist them. And then after we gave them probably 2 or 3 times, they talked to them over the bullhorn, telling them to go. They said, "Okay, we're going to try to move them off the hill and get them to disperse." And like I said, I went. Our platoon, a group of us, went. Maybe 10 or 15 of us went to the left of Taylor Hall, and the rest, the big group, went to the right. And as we were going up that hill, I couldn't even see from where we were what was going on the other side, but I do remember hearing the shooting, and I just couldn't imagine what was going on. I mean, I knew everybody had live ammunition. I knew everybody had bayonets on their rifles. But when I heard the shooting, I just couldn't imagine what that was. And then we turned the corner, and one of the students was being tended to by a few people, and it was obvious that something bad had happened. So that was, after that, one of my recollections from that day, before we went up the hill, I'm sorry to bounce around, but one of my recollections I just thought of was my sister and brother-in-law both were students at Kent. At the time, my sister had, I think, graduated already and was either doing her student teaching or preparing for that. And my brother-in-law, my now brother-in-law, was a student. And as we were standing in that line, he came walking along the row of students, and here I was on one side as a guardsman, and here he is walking, and he was just on his way to or from class, I don't know. and he went on about his business. But he could have been up. I don't think he's the kind of person that would have been up there. He's not one to get involved in that kind of activity. But it was strange to have him there, and I know he and I talk about it frequently. That's just a side note.
In the hours after the shooting, where were you, or where was your company?
That's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer that. We got there on the 2nd, and probably the night of the 2nd. And after the shooting, I don't remember where. I don't remember. It's just like I don't know. It's a blank. I can't help it.
Do you know when you returned home from Kent? What day that would have been?
No, I do not.
Do you recall if the National Guard issued any orders or instructions to its members kind of in the days afterwards, or perhaps any instructions on how to navigate this?
Well, I'd never thought of that, but when you asked the question, the first thing that came to my mind was there was not a written order, but just a verbal order that came down that said, "Don't talk about it. Don't talk to people. The people at the top don't talk to anybody. We'll take care of from our perspective." And the people that were, I believe that most of the people that did the shooting were not in my company. So when we went back, I don't know that there was anybody that actually had had pulled the trigger on their weapon. But I'm not sure about that. But I'm sorry, I just had never thought of it. I don't remember the ride back to the armory. I don't remember going home and sitting around going, "Wow, what just happened?" I'm sorry, I just don't have any memory on that.
In the years after the Kent State shootings, are there instances where you were treated differently, perhaps personally or professionally, because you had been in the National Guard?
I think in general, people when I tell people that I was there, they're intrigued by the fact that I was there on the Guard side, and they want to know how I felt about it then, and how, what my feelings were about what happened that day. So I have been, but in general, most of my friends don't talk about it too much. And other than my sister, like I said, and brother-in-law who went there, and my grandson is a student there now. And so we were over there. I hadn't even been over. I don't think I'd been on the campus since, for any reason. I haven't been to the memorial. But my grandson did take us. The memorial wasn't open, but he took us up to the parking lot where the 4 memorials are in the parking lot.
During that visit with your grandson, I mean, can you perhaps share some of the feelings or recollections that being back on campus, brought back, perhaps?
Well, I was shocked at how much the campus has changed since that time. I was also quite shocked that the four spots where the four students who died that day, where they died, are now just don't park here parking spots in the parking lot. I thought that was rather sad that there couldn't be more than that. I know parking's at a premium at a university, but it just seemed to me there should have been more of a memorial than what they had. Like I said, I haven't been in the actual museum or memorial that they created, but the actual spots are pretty clearly defined on any map you bring up. They know where it is, and now they're just X'd out parking spots.
How have your feelings about the episode at Kent State changed or evolved over the years?
I still have strong feelings about the Guard being there in the first place, and the fact that we were ill-trained to do the mission we were sent there for. It was the only civil disobedience was, or it was one of the only reasons the National Guard existed at that time, but we didn't get that kind of training. We got training for military type activities, more Army, not police activities. And I guess that's my biggest concern from the time was we were being asked to do things that we weren't equipped either with the right self-protection and the right training and everything. We weren't ready to do that.
How often have historians or news reporters, for example, tried to reach out to you to speak so that you could speak about being at Kent State?
I think only once, really, before you. A young lady who's a history teacher in the high school here in Medina is the daughter of a close friend of mine. She knew I had been to Kent State, and she was just she wasn't doing a full historical documentation like I guess you are, but she just wanted her students to hear. She's brought in like people from survivors from the Korean War or other people that have been through things that maybe students today don't understand, or so it was just a one-time opportunity to go in and talk to they were like juniors in high school. That's the only time.
Yeah. I mean, you were at the Kent State shootings in May of 1970. I mean, how do you think being there has affected you over the last 50 years?
Well, like I think I told you in one of the emails, I don't look at it like it's really had a great impact on my life. I obviously am acutely aware of the date. I'm acutely aware of Kent State. Whenever I hear Kent State, I can't think of anything else but that. Even when my grandson's going to school there, but other than that, it isn't like I had to have any kind of special psychological assistance with what happened there. I think more than anything because from my perspective, we didn't participate in the shooting other than we had the same uniform on as the people that did shoot. And so I just can't say that it's had any great impact on my life. It didn't change that. I certainly wasn't about to become a 20-year member of the National Guard afterwards. Shortly afterwards, I don't know whether if you were able to even to find a letter that I wrote to either the battalion commander or the adjutant general of the state of Ohio after Kent State. I wrote a letter to them saying that I didn't want to be a second lieutenant anymore. I said if this is how we're going to be deployed, I don't want to be the person in charge. I want to be a private now. I don't want to, and they wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me resign my commission. They took me out of the active National Guard and put me in the St. Louis Control Group, which at the time was just a bookkeeping kind of place where your name and numbers were kept, all your records were kept, and you didn't go to meetings anymore. So I guess maybe to me that was like, okay, if that's what you want to do, and I kind of let it go at that. I probably should have stayed after it. I sometimes feel guilty that although I did end up testifying at the federal grand jury, I think I did. I know I went down there, but I'm not sure I testified. It changed my life in the fact that my National Guard activities were over. And it was, like I said earlier, it wasn't something I really enjoyed doing one weekend a month or 2 weeks during the summer. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Maybe a final question. I am curious to know about your memories of the grand jury. So you followed this when 8 members of the National Guard were indicted. But what are your memories of kind of the trial proceedings?
I have to tell you again that I'm not even sure I testified. I think I did, but I don't remember it. I remember I have memories of going there and being like scared to death of going into a federal building for any purpose. But I don't and I felt bad for I knew some of the guys primarily from the Worcester unit that because I was assigned to that unit for a while, I knew some of those guys that had pulled the trigger and I felt bad for them that this was happening. But I don't remember testifying because I don't think I had much to say. They probably listened to me for a very short period of time and said, well, let's move on to the next person because I didn't have much to add of any significance.
The 8 indicted guardsmen from that Worcester unit that you speak of were acquitted ultimately.
Yeah.
Do you recall your feelings when you heard about the acquittal?
I think my recollection of how I felt was that it was probably justifiable. I'd never thought anybody went to Kent State with the intention of shooting anybody. I think they were put in a position where they were trained to do something, and to do, and it wasn't what they were there doing. And when the military trains you to shoot, and if you don't shoot, you're wrong in a real war situation, and that's what they train you to do. And then suddenly, when you feel like your life is in jeopardy, you do what you were trained to do. That's hard for me to say because I know people died and they shouldn't have, but I also knew these people and they were good people, and they didn't go there with evil intent. Maybe they were tired, maybe they heard something they didn't, and that's where it gets real foggy because I wasn't right there. I knew that they thought somebody said fire, or they heard a gun go off, and that just triggers that built-in thing. Oh, everybody's shooting now. It's time to shoot. So I didn't know all of them. I didn't know any of them really personally, but I knew them by name, and I just couldn't imagine that they deserved to go to jail for it.
So do you think at the time, the contemporary media coverage kind of surrounding, kind of in the aftermath of the Kent State shooting, do you think that was fair to the Guardsmen?
No, I never did. I didn't think they told the whole story. I thought they only told one side. They didn't talk about where we had been, what we came from. They didn't talk about what was actually going on there that day. They never talked about the fact that they were given multiple opportunities to disperse, to go home, to go back to their dorm rooms, to go back to their classrooms. None of that seemed to matter. And I thought that, again, not trying to justify 4 people dying and multiple others getting injured. But to me, it left the guard out there as if the guard were the evil ones, and the students were the terrible victims. And I'm thinking there was victims on both sides.
Mr. Herthneck, is there anything else that maybe I haven't asked, or anything that you want to add to flush this narrative out just a little bit more?
No, I think I'm okay. I think I'm sorry that I don't remember more, but to be honest, I'm 74, going to be 75 in May, and I can't remember my wedding day. Now, I don't have Alzheimer's, okay? And my wife gets very angry that I can't remember our wedding day. I look at the pictures and I say, oh yeah, I'm there. But I don't remember. And maybe I remember the birth of our children. I remember a lot of other things, but my wedding day for some reason is a blank. So, there's things about, obviously, that you made me think about that I'm going to have to sit down and really reconsider. Do you have dates there in front of you? When did we go? When did the guard leave Kent?
I do not know. No, I know the ROTC building was on fire the night of the 2nd into the 3rd, and of course the May 4th, the day of the shootings, was midday. But as far as dispersing, I do not know.
Yeah. I don't know when. I don't know if you don't mind. I'll tell you another story about being at Kent. And I'm thinking this must have been after the shooting. We became like on patrol, and there was an Army Reserve armory someplace within a blocks of the campus, off campus, but and in that armory there was supposed to be weapons, and the alarm went off as if somebody was burglarizing that armory, and they were concerned that there was concern from law enforcement that somebody might get into those weapons and create some kind of a huge conflagration where there'd be shooting from in both directions. And we were sent there in a Jeep, me and maybe another couple people, to go check it out. And I just remember how scared I was about going there. I mean, I wasn't a police officer, and we were patrolling the streets of Kent almost as if we were, but there was other times while we were patrolling, even after the shooting, where students would come up to us and they understood that we were just human beings like they were, and we got along fine. But that night was like 2:00 in the morning or something, and the alarm's going off in the armory, and we got sent over there to check it out. No policemen involved, and I remember being extremely scared that was not going to be a good thing. But there was no problem. So, long story short, there was no problem there, and we went on about our patrol. But that's the only other memory I have. I remember the other memory I have was, and I don't know whether this was before the shooting or after, we were at the arch at the main entrance to the campus, not where the campus entrance is now, but where it was then. And there was rocks and bricks and stuff being thrown, and must have been before the shooting, maybe on the day of the 3rd, maybe. I don't know, because there was some instance, a lot of rumors around the National Guardsmen that other guardsmen had been hurt by thrown bricks or rocks or something, that they were being tended to, and nobody seriously injured, but somebody getting hit with a rock. And so some of that might have led to some of the tension in the guardsmen's minds on the 4th. Don't know.